We've done it, you guys. We've reached the end of 2021, and it's time to talk about what my favorite tech was this year. Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite products that I reviewed over the course of this year. Now, since I review tech for creative professionals, everything that I'm going to be talking about here is kind of in that vein. I'm not going to be talking about every tech product that came out. I'm going to be talking about things primarily that shipped with pens or shipped with pen capabilities, and which one of these I liked and tell you why. Cool? Cool. So let's get to number 10. This is the Sense Labs pen tablet. Now there's a handful of people at Sense Labs who used to work at Wacom, and what their goal is to make a tablet and some pen tech that is just as good as what Wacom does. Now, if you've watched this channel for a long time, you know that I hold Wacom up as one of the gold standards of drawing technology, a standard that a lot of other companies try to reach. Since this was Sense Labs' very first product, I was surprised to find that they pretty much nailed it from the point of view of how good this pen was. And that's why it's on this list. Now, the question you might have is, well, if it's that good, how come it's not higher on this list? Well, I think there's a couple reasons why. One, this isn't a display tablet. This is a tablet that sits in front of your computer. You draw on it, the line appears on the screen in front of you. So in terms of technology, this isn't that exciting of a product. It's just a really well executed version of that product. We also have products out there by companies like Huion that have been doing this sort of thing for years that are almost as good, like 90%, 95% of the way of being just as good, for a fraction of the price. So that's the other thing that kind of is a knock against them. Even though this particular device is priced lower than Wacom's Intuos Pro, it's still not as cheap as what Huion's doing. So it kind of falls somewhere in the middle. The reason I am excited about this product and this company is, what are they going to produce in the future? I hope they move on to pen displays. They say they're working on a pen display. Maybe they'll license their tech out to other companies to use in tablets. We will see. The future is bright. I'm excited to see what they do. Number 9, the Galaxy Tab S7 FE. This has been kind of a strange year for tech, and one of those areas we've seen it is in supply shortages, especially in chips. Because of that, we've seen this affect some of the things that have shipped. For example, Samsung has shipped a new version of their Galaxy Tab pretty much every year for the last several years. This year, we did not get a Galaxy Tab S8. Instead, what we got was an FE version of last year's S7. FE stands for Fan Edition, and they tend to be a little more inexpensive than their bigger brothers that are beefier. This product is different from a lot of other Android tablets in a few ways. One, it is a 12.4-inch screen. It also has the pen packed in, and honestly, this is a really good drawing experience. One of the better Android drawing experiences out there. The reason I've ranked it lower on this list is its price. They've cut a lot of corners. For example, the screen isn't nearly as good as its bigger brother. Some of the internals that they've put in this are slower than you would expect, and they're pricing this around $500-ish. I think if they cut the price by $100 or even $200 at some point down the road, you could take a look at this and say, wow, this is a tremendous value for what you're getting. But since it is kind of starting to hit that premium tier as far as price, it's a little bit harder to justify the cost cutting that they did to it. Number 8, we're talking about the M1 iPad Pro. Now, right now, I know a lot of you are jumping into the comments and are going to absolutely slaughter me. How can the M1 iPad Pro be so low on this list? Well, I've got a good answer for you. I honestly don't think it's that good a value for the price. Now, the M1 chip is amazing, and the reason it's amazing is because what it can do to a laptop computer, all of those Mac computers that are using the M1s. But the reality is there's very little that you're going to do with an iPad that needs that much power. So you can look at something like the iPad Air and save a couple $100 and get pretty much the same experience. You could go across the spec list and say the iPad Pro is better. It's got the better screen, it's got the better refresh rate, it's, every detail is going to be better. But do you need all of that? I don't think you do. So it's not that the iPad Pro is bad. It's a wonderful, wonderful device. It's just that It's a lot of power and you're paying for that power, but there's not much you can do with it. And if that made Apple fans mad, number 7 is going to make them even angrier. We're talking about the 9th generation iPad. That's right, it's higher than the iPad Pro. Now again, we could look at that spec list and we could go down at spec for spec, and the iPad Pro is better, so theoretically it should be higher on the list. But the reason I'm putting the standard iPad on this list is because of value. It's an incredible value for the price it's at. Now, I did a video a few months back where I compared all of the iPads, and I looked at things like drawing lag. When you're drawing in Procreate, how far is that line behind your pen? And what I discovered was, when I'm comparing all of these iPads, they're not that different. The reality is when we're talking about drawing and illustration, you get a very, very similar drawing experience on the cheapest iPad available as you do on that super high-end iPad Pro. If you're dealing with huge files and you need all of those layers and you need all of that power, yes, go Pro. But I think for most people, if you need a really good budget price product, this is one of the best values out there, period. And that's why I put the 9th gen iPad here on this list. Now, this is a weird one because I want to say up front, I'm not sure most people should buy this. It's a real novel idea for a phone. It's kind of cool. I really enjoyed it. I used it as my daily driver for the better part of a month, and I loved it. I thought it was super novel, but at the end of the day, I was pretty happy to move back to a traditional phone. What I thought was cool here is that it is pen enabled. You can use an S Pen with this device, and it was a pretty good drawing experience. Because this is a foldable phone, what they had to do was they had to use digitizers for the pens on 2 different screens, and there's a gap in the middle, and they have to kind of triangulate, that's probably the wrong word. They have to figure out when you go across that gap, what happens to the pen so that it doesn't do anything wonky. And I was really surprised at how well it performs. Now, the downside of that isn't so much the sensors in the middle, but there's actually a physical bump that you can feel if you run your finger across it, and you can definitely feel if you run your pen across it. Now, if you're just drawing lines back and forth with the pen, it works pretty well. But when you start applying pressure, it can forget that pressure. If you're using tilt, it can forget that tilt. But overall, I loved the fact that you did have a phone and a tablet all in one in your hand that you can take with you. I think if they can get rid of the physical bump that you feel when the pen is going across the middle of the screen, they've got a winner. They also got to get the price down. It's really expensive. Number 5, the Samsung Galaxy Book 360 Pro. I did say the Galaxy Fold was too expensive. I think this hits that Goldilocks spot of a really good price for a Windows laptop, but it's a 360-degree laptop, so you can flip it around and draw on it too. I think the value for the price that you get here is fantastic. This is not a screamer of a computer. It's not the fastest computer out there. You're not going to want to game with it. You're not going to want to do video editing with it, but it's very lightweight. It does feel like a sketchbook when you flip it around, and it comes with the Wacom S Pen. I'm sorry, it's the Samsung S Pen, powered by Wacom Tech. What all of that means is it's a very good pen. It gives you great line quality. It does everything you need it to do, and you have full windows there, so you can run things like Photoshop or Clip Studio or anything you want. Number 4, the Huion Canvas Pro 16. Several years ago, like 3, maybe even 4 years ago, Wacom released the Wacom Cintiq Pro 16. And that was a device that was really ahead of its time. It had a laminated display. That display was 4K. It had etched glass. You could use a USB-C cord to connect it to your computer, so you didn't have these gangly 3-in-1 cords that most of these devices come with. It was a super premium device that all other devices out there have been slowly catching up with ever since. And this year, I think Huion kind of caught it, almost caught it. Let's say Huion caught it. It has a 4K display. It's now laminated. The pen is really, really good. You can make the case using this pen next to a Wacom pen that the Wacom pen is better, but it's not so much better that it's worth paying 3 times as much for. So even though, as far as Huion products go, this is one of the more expensive ones, it's also an incredibly high quality one as well. Number 3, the Surface Pro 8. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a long time, you know that I love the Surface Pro. In fact, this channel started when I reviewed a Surface Pro 3, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm getting old. The problem with the Surface line is that it's stagnated. At the time, it was really cool to have a pretty good pack-in pen. But nowadays, pen technology has gotten way, way better, and the Surface is still using the same technology that they were using years ago. Until this year, they made a massive improvement to their pen. This is the Surface Slim Pen 2. Now there are some gimmicks to it. For example, it's got like a little vibrating engine inside that tries to replicate the feel of dragging your pen across paper. Sometimes in some apps it's turned up a little high and so it becomes kind of gimmicky. Sometimes it's turned down kind of low. I thought it was kind of a cool effect. I liked it. But I think the key here is just how consistent that pen was. The old pen sometimes was okay, other times would give me just crazy wobbles or crazy jitters or just crazy performance. It could be good or it could be bad, and you never knew what you were going to get from day to day. This pen is consistent and it nails it, and though it's not perfect, it's so good, and it feels good to draw with and just sketch with, and drawing on the Surface Pro 8 this year was a joy. And the thing I'm really hopeful for is that if Microsoft is improving their own pen protocol, that these are features we might see roll out, and these quality of life things might be rolling out to other computers in the future as well, and that's really exciting. Number 2, the iPad mini. The iPad mini had been neglected, it hadn't been updated in quite a while, and it's such a cute little drawing tablet, but now it's so much better just by incorporating the same flat design we saw in last year's iPad Air and we've had in the iPad Pros for several years now. It's such a little thing being able to pair and charge your pen along the side, but your pen is almost always charged up. It's very convenient to carry it with you, and this thing is so small that if you're drawing on the go, it's so dang convenient. A lot of people asked in the review, is this screen too small? And I will admit, I still enjoy drawing on the iPad Pro. However, I don't think it is too small. What happens on a lot of Windows computers is the software is designed to take up a good chunk of the screen. So when that screen gets smaller, what do? You lose drawing space. But many of the iPad apps that are available out there have very minimal interfaces, so you have almost that entire little screen to draw on, and it's pretty handy. If you are using something like Affinity Photo or Affinity Designer, you are going to feel a little bit cramped. I don't think the iPad mini is really great in apps like that, but Procreate or something like that, I think it's fantastic. And number 1, my favorite device of the year has been the Surface Studio laptop. If you saw my review, this is probably not a surprise to you at all. It really seems like this is a laptop that was designed specifically for me. It's not for everybody. It's for me. And that's all that matters because I made up the list, right? Again, we get that Surface Slim Pen 2 here. It charges in a really cool way underneath. At first, I wasn't quite sure about the design because it feels like it's sitting on top of a platter or something like that. But when you're actually using the laptop, you don't really see that unless you like get under your table and look at it sideways. And so the effect of actually seeing it in person is the laptop looks really slim, but it has those vents along the side, so you get some pretty good airflow. Now, this computer is not a monster. This thing isn't designed to be like a top-end performance machine, but it's a good enough performant machine to do everything I needed it to do. The screen folds down so you can put it at different angles. There's kind of the display mode and then the secondary mode where it kind of turns it into a tablet. Now, it is kind of heavy, so you probably don't want to use this on your lap, but on a desk, it's pretty comfortable. I do wish that hinge was not quite as floaty when you were disconnecting it, but other than that, I thought this was a fantastic computer. I thought it was a really cool computer. And so that is my list. You've probably noticed that the M1 MacBook Pros are not on that list, primarily because technically, even though I love that computer and a lot of things it does, especially the battery life and the lack of fan noise, it's not really a piece of drawing tech. It's not really kind of in my wheelhouse of the sort of things I reviewed. Otherwise, it would definitely have a place on this list. Maybe number 2, maybe number 3, somewhere up there definitely. But what did I miss? What is on your list? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.